Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, and welcome to my presentation. Today we will be learning about a special parasitic plant, a dodder. Before we start, what is a parasitic plant, and what is a dodder? Parasitic plants are plants that obtain their nutrition from other plants. A dodder looks like a tapeworm when it first starts its life. It will never grow any leaves or roots, and it's quite a small plant. It grows in a spiral shape, whirling around until it finds a host to feed on. It latches onto the host as soon as it finds one, and invades the host using small tubes that suck out water and nutrients out of the host and into itself. As the dodder plant grows bigger, it traps its victim in a messy web of stems, either yellow or orange. The interesting thing about this plant is that it eavesdrops on its host to know when to flower, or to reproduce. Under normal circumstances, plants use their leaves to sense when the environment conditions are best to reproduce. Dodders have no leaves, so by eavesdropping on its host, or using a chemical signal from the host as its own, it can know when to reproduce without using leaves. Synchronizing flowering really makes sense for these plant parasites. Jian Krong Wu, I don't know how to pronounce that, sorry, a botanist at the Chinese Academy of Sciences Kunming Institute of Botany says, if a dodder flowered any sooner, it would make less seeds and it would be a lot smaller than it could have been. If it had flowered any later, its host would have probably died by then, and the source of nutrients that support the dodder would disappear, and it would be harder for the dodder to flower. Wu had already displayed beforehand that dodders and their host plants chemically exchange many signals. He also had an inkling that the parasites might be picking up the flowering signal from the host. In a greenhouse laboratory, researchers conducted an experiment on 3 Australian dodders. Australian dodder plants absorb a protein called flowering locust T, or FT, which is the chemical that triggers their flowering. The researchers let each dodder latch onto 3 plants with different flowering times. The result was that every parasite shifted their flowering time to match their host, confirming Wu's suspicion. They then removed the host's FT gene, and the dodders no longer flowered. The third and last experiment was adding fluorescent protein to the host's FT. They witnessed the FT glow in the Australian dodder tissues. This confirmed that the parasites were using the chemical cue in order to know when to flower. James Westwood, a plant pathologist at Virginia Tech in Blacksburg, stated that dodder and host plant synchronization has never been so clearly shown as in this paper. However, biology, or even science in general, is never that simple. He also states that there are examples of some dodders flowering when their host isn't flowering. And so, it still remains unclear whether or not the parasites may use other signals to flower. Now for my personal thoughts. The requirement list said we were allowed to list all of our questions here, so here it goes. I'm really curious about the examples of dodders flowering while their host isn't flowering. Is it common? Is something preventing them from flowering at the same time as their host, or is it just a coincidence? What if some hosts are slowly developing a way to confuse the dodder plants as a way of survival, so that the dodder plant flowers at the wrong time, or just doesn't know when to flower? Is there a specific plant that dodder plants can't synchronize with? How does a dodder plant know that the FT is the exact signal for flowering? It could be another signal, or just a random protein. In other plants, another protein could be the signal for flowering. So how does the dodder plant know which signal is which? It's not like they have a parent, teacher, or a friend teaching them what signals hosts could give off. Unless... Actually, never mind. That probably doesn't happen. Probably. My own thoughts on dodder plants is that they're almost exactly like the virus cells we briefly learned about the other day. They both need to find a host in order to reproduce. They're very interesting. However, I feel really bad for the host that gets trapped by them. who is most likely destined for doom. I chose this topic because it met all the requirements I was looking for. The requirements were to not only be interesting, but to at least show one thing similar to what we have learned in class. And I loved how there were experiments in this article, and we've been learning about controlled experiments in class. We've also been learning a bit about viruses, which are pretty similar to parasitic plants. By the way, the article was, "This Parasitic Plant Eavesdrops on Its House to Know When to Flower" by Jonathan Lambert. Here's the link. And that's it for now. See ya. Oh wow, that's a full 6 minutes. Hope this wasn't too long.